I slammed on my brakes so hard that a cloud of dust shot straight up and just hung in the air like something out of a cartoon, or maybe a bad omen, I'll let you decide. But right there, smack on my own front lawn, was Karen. Yes, that Karen, the one who'd terrorized the whole neighborhood from her perch on the HOA board, with her platinum helmet of hair and a voice that could cut through concrete. And there she was, laughing away, flipping burgers over a flaming grill she'd dragged up onto my back deck, wearing an apron that actually said, Queen of the Neighborhood, if you can believe that. Then I see it dozens of folding chairs set up across my field, a string of balloons and tacky streamers flapping in the breeze, some DJ dragging cables near my barn like we were about to have Coachella. Karen was throwing a full-blown BBQ party on my ranch, and I hadn't even been invited to my own land. I jumped out of my truck so mad I could barely keep my words straight, and I stormed over. "Karen, what the hell are you doing?" I barked. She looked at me like I was the one out of line, waved her spatula, and said, "Oh, you're back early. You weren't supposed to be here till Sunday." I blinked. My jaw actually dropped. "This is my ranch. You can't just..." But before I could finish, she calmly whipped out her phone and called 911. She started pacing my yard, telling the operator, "There's a strange man threatening me on private property. He's aggressive. I think he's dangerous. Please hurry." I just stood there frozen. Did she just call the cops on me in my own yard? That's when the DJ looked up from his speakers and said into the mic, Karen, he's the guy from the photos inside." And Karen, without missing a beat, snapped back. "He's trespassing. He's pretending to be the owner." That's when the sirens started howling in the distance, and I realized this wasn't a bluff. She actually wanted me hauled off in handcuffs. Let me back up a second because none of this makes sense unless you know how it all started. My name's Jason Miller, and this 12-acre ranch just outside Asheville, North Carolina is mine. Bought it 6 years ago after I left law enforcement. It's not just land, it's my life's work, my sanctuary. I'd finally saved up enough to get a place with space, quiet peace. And I was proud of it. You know, I'd taken a 4-day fishing trip upstate, first time I'd left in years. I made sure everything was locked, told my ranch hand, Luis, to take the weekend off since the animals were all boarded. Supposed to be nobody here. But the weather turned, so I cut my trip short by a day. And as I rolled up, I could see my front gate hanging wide open, fresh tire tracks in the dirt. My rocking chair moved off the porch, and Karen's smug face the first thing I see. Now, if you don't know Karen, you're lucky. She's the vice president of the HOA. But the kicker is my ranch isn't even inside the HOA's official zone. Doesn't matter to Karen. She acts like she owns the whole zip code. She's fined people for creative landscaping, forced folks to paint their fences beige, even tried to cite me because my barn clashed with the community aesthetic. It was funny at first. It got less funny every time she tried to push a little further. But this was a whole new level. I started snapping photos. People I'd never seen before. Dancing on my land. Kids in my barn. Someone dragging my hose across the yard to fill an inflatable pool. And Karen sipping wine like she was at her own wedding. The closer those sirens got, the more I realized the neighbors were watching too, some of them filming with their phones. The DJ cut the music. Karen stood there, phone to her ear, telling the cops, "He's right here. He's threatening my guests. I think he's on something. Yes, please hurry." My hands shook as I tried to get her attention. "Karen, you're trespassing. You broke in. This is my ranch." And she just folded her arms and said, sweet as pie, "You were the owner, Jason, but you abandoned it. The community has a right to safe spaces and you left it neglected. 4 days I was gone and she's talking like I left for a year. We interpreted it as an extended vacancy." She said, "I'm protecting neighborhood standards." I almost laughed, except now the red and blue lights were flickering over my fence. 2 cop cars pulled up, Karen waving like she was signaling for a parade. I stepped forward, hands up, heart pounding, but one cop put his hand near his holster and shouted, "Sir, step back." The other said, "No sudden moves. Let's talk this out." Karen ducked behind them, whispering in their ears. Suddenly, both cops were staring daggers at me. "We need to see some ID, sir." I kept my hands visible, dug out my license, told them I could show the deed and mail inside. "Not according to the call we got," one replied, while Karen jumped in with, "He broke in. He's harassing my family. I didn't want to ruin the BBQ, but he's not who he says he is." By now, the whole party was dead quiet. One cop took my ID and left to check it. The other just stood there, eyes never leaving me. That's when Karen, loud enough for everyone, said, "You should cuff him before he runs. People like him always do." And man, that hit me. People like him. That's when it hit me she didn't just want me off my land. She wanted to humiliate me, erase me in front of a crowd. She almost had the whole town believing her too. The cop finally came back holding my ID, looking at me, then Karen, then back at me. "Your name's Jason Miller." "Yes, sir. This is my property. I can prove it, all the paperwork's inside." Karen tried to keep her poker face, saying I'd been missing it. Looked abandoned. She was just holding things together for the community. The cop asked, "Ma'am, do you have any legal right to this property?" She sputtered something about community trust expansion, but nothing official. He asked if we could go inside to verify, and I was more than happy to. Inside, I laid out everything. Deed tax records, photos from when I bought the place. The officer checked it all, and after a long pause, nodded. "You're good, Mr. Miller." I felt relief until I looked outside and saw Karen firing up the music again, acting like nothing had happened. The cop asked if I wanted to press charges. I said, "Not yet, just get them all off my property." It took a while, but eventually the DJ left the guests packed up, and Karen stood on my porch glaring at me. "This isn't over," she said. "You have no idea how petty I can get." And with that, she strutted out, head held high. Next morning, I found a red violation slip stuffed in my screen door. HOA violation for unauthorized use of land pending action, possible seizure for public recreational use. Signed by Karen, now acting HOA president. They were trying to steal my ranch. I called the county land office in a panic. After some hold music and bouncing around, I finally got a clerk who confirmed my ranch was outside the HOA line. They had zero authority. "But watch out," she said. "Sometimes these boards file nuisance claims as a workaround. Just be careful." Now let me introduce a couple people, because it wasn't just me versus Karen anymore. There's Luis, my ranch hand, quiet but sharp, loves the animals like their family. I called him as soon as I hung up with the county. Then Abigail, my late wife's sister. She lives a couple towns over, used to visit all the time before life got busy. When I told her what was going on, she was in her car before I could say barbecue. Last was Tucker, an old friend from my sheriff days. Retired, but still got connections. If anyone could sniff out how deep Karen's claws went, it was him. Luis arrived first, took one look at the yard full of trash and party debris, and just whistled. "She threw a party. Called the cops on you," he said, shaking his head. We started cleaning up, and as we worked, Luis found something, a tiny camera hidden under the porch. Then another by the barn. Karen had planted surveillance on my property. We pulled them out, wrapped them in a rag. I was rattled, but I knew Tucker would want to see these. That night, Abigail showed up, lasagna in hand, ready for war. "Jason, you have to fight this. People like her feed off silence." My phone buzzed a voicemail from Karen 1, last chance to surrender the property peacefully. "Think about the community. You've always been the outsider. Be smart." I played it for Luis and Abigail. Karen wasn't just being petty, she was setting me up, and she had help. I tried going to the police with the cameras, the notice, the voicemail. The officer at the desk barely looked up. Another officer came out, said, "We were told not to get involved unless there's a crime. Karen's got friends high up, Councilman Drexler. So much for law and order." That night, Tucker rolled in with his notebook. "Karen's going full dictator," he said. "She's got help. Lock everything down. Lock." The next morning, Luis found 3 words spray painted across my front fence in red: "Community property now." Another notice nailed to the post. You are forbidden from making changes to this land until HOA review is complete. Karen. Tucker read it and said, "She's making this look official. If enough people believe it, it becomes truth." I wanted to tear it down, but left it as evidence. That night we installed our own cameras, real ones. I wasn't letting her frame me again. Then I posted the whole story online, every detail, every photo, every phony document. It blew up. Folks from around the country weighed in, some sharing their own Karen horror stories, others offering support. That's when a local news reporter reached out, wanted to cover my story on TV. I agreed, but just as things seemed to be turning, a moving truck pulled up. Karen stepped out with a key, waving a new emergency HOA occupancy order. She was actually trying to move in. I laughed and called her bluff, but she dialed 911 again, crying about an aggressive man refusing to leave. The cops showed up, but this time Officer Hayes, who'd been there before, read through her paperwork and said, "Ma'am, this isn't legal. HOA can't seize private property." She doubled down, but the cops shut her down hard and sent her packing. Tucker soon uncovered the real game. Councilman Drexler was trying to build a rec center, and my ranch was the last parcel he needed. Karen and her cronies were trying to force me out so they could hand the land over. That night, Karen snuck onto my property dressed all in black, spray can in hand, didn't know the new cameras had night vision. I watched her on my phone, then hit the silent alarm. Tucker and Officer Hayes pulled up, caught her red-handed. She screamed about harassment, but Hayes cuffed her on the spot. The news team showed up the next morning. I handed over every scrap of evidence, voicemails, forged notices, surveillance footage. The story went viral. Within days, the HOA board removed Karen, voided all violation notices, and the councilman stepped down under a cloud of scandal. My ranch was finally quiet. Finally mine again. For weeks afterward, people stopped by, some just to apologize, others to share their own stories. Karen went to jail for trespassing, fraud, vandalism, you name it. The board was audited, uncovering years of dirty tricks. Turns out Karen had bullied and stolen from more people than anyone guessed. The day I got the official exemption letter from the county, I framed it and hung it on my wall. That weekend, I threw a real BBQ country music, friends, no HOA in sight. We even joked about renaming the place Second Wind Ranch. Abigail helped plant new flowers, Luis learned to bake pie, and Tucker came by to keep an eye on things. A few months later, Karen sent one last letter from jail, just bitterness on paper. I tossed it in the fire. To anyone out there dealing with a nightmare, HOA, or a bully with a clipboard, don't fold. Don't let fake power silence you. Sometimes you just have to stand your ground, and sometimes that's enough to win. Where are you watching from? Ever had your own Karen war? Share your story. Let's hear how you'd handle a mess like this, because I'm telling you, the line between neighbor and nightmare can get mighty thin.